This is the Rollin' with Tay podcast. I'm your host, Tasia, aka Tay, and my guest on today's episode is Michelle Houston, who is an Atlas World Record holder, the first documented two-time brain aneurysm survivor to complete a sprint triathlon for the very first time at the age of 64. I hope you enjoy this inspiring conversation. Thank you for being a guest. And yeah, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm ready to share this story with everyone.
Okay, all
Yes.
right. So
Okay.
let's start at the beginning.
Okay, so I am going to go back to when I was pregnant with my youngest son, because that's really the first time that a triathlon came up, but not in the way that you may think. Actually, when I had my first son, I gained like 40 pounds. And that was the hardest weight, to get rid of. And my sons are almost 10 years apart. So being mindful of that when I was pregnant with my younger son, I tried to eat right. Actually, I had given up red meat at that point, and not that I didn't like red meat, it didn't like me. I had some issues where, I had a difficult time digesting it, something called gastroparesis. So anyway, I was being mindful, of what I was eating, and I stayed active because at that time I was living in New Jersey. That's where I grew up, all of my schooling. And I took a job with the city of Philadelphia, and there was a residency requirement, but I had a certain amount of time before I would, that before I had to move. So I was walking to the bus stop, to catch the bus to Philadelphia. And then, of course I was doing, a lot of walking, those city blocks, they're pretty big, so my first trimester, I was doing a lot of walking. Then my second trimester, cause like I said, I'm trying to stay active because I don't want to gain all that weight. And my second trimester, I was riding my bike. And I would write at that time, it was a long time ago, we didn't have or at least I didn't, the devices, to measure, distance or whatnot. But I know I was riding quite a distance, and I was actually riding until I was 6 months pregnant. And the doctor made me stop because I was not gaining weight, so I was being, I guess, counterproductive.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I stopped riding. And then my last trimester, because my son was born in August, you know where I was? I was in the pool. and, everyone at the pool had a nickname for me. They called me Watermelon. And I love swimming. Actually, growing up in South Jersey, we always had a pool in the backyard, and I taught myself how to swim. And actually, my very first job was as a camp counselor, during the summer. And it was at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Actually,
Mhm.
we would, go there with the kids and be in the pool. So how triathlon came up, or triathlete, is, because like I said, my first trimester I was walking, second trimester I was pedaling, third trimester I was swimming. I said, this baby is going to be a triathlete. I guess I kind of spoke it into existence, but it wasn't him. It turned out to be me. Oh, so, growing up, I wasn't, athletic in school. But I would call myself like a tomboy because I would play with my male cousin, um, more so than my sister because we were like 5 years apart. She didn't want her little sister around, but my male cousin, who was the same age as her, we would go ride bikes, play cowboys and Indians and all of that stuff. So I was, a little adventurous growing up. So then, I'm going to fast forward to, when I was living in Philadelphia. And at this point, I was now, residing in Philadelphia. And me and my husband had divorced. So I was in the state of Pennsylvania with me and my youngest son, who was 7 at the time. Well, at the time of my aneurysm, he was 7. My older son, because they were so far apart, he was getting ready to finish high school. So,
Mhm.
I let him stay over there with his, grandparents so he could graduate, from high school over there where he had, all of his friends and everything. So it was me and my 7-year-old. And I had gone to work, and I'm a court reporter, official court reporter. The job requires a lot of focus and concentration, and you have to block out any other noises that, may be going on, around you. So for a couple of weeks before my aneurysm ruptured, I had a dull headache, and I was a headache person anyway. I would get, like chronic sinus infections and whatnot. So this headache, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't like a migraine or anything. It was just more of an annoying headache. And, just kind of slowed me down a little bit. And so this particular day during lunch break, I didn't feel like, going out to get lunch. So I laid my head on, my desk, and the judge's judicial aide came over to me and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm just not feeling myself today." And so, I got through the day and I drove home. I was, working, Center City, Philadelphia, and I lived kind of out in the burbs. So it was like a 45-minute drive. And I did things a little differently because I would usually go home, put on my, comfortable clothes and go to the neighbors and pick up my son. But
Mhm.
because of how I was feeling, I picked him up first. Thank God I did. I picked him up, brought him home, and then I wasn't home that long. I remember being on a phone call, and then when I hung up the phone, I heard a pop in my head,
Mm.
and I literally saw stars. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't lose consciousness. I just felt like a little weak, and I was able to make it to the couch. And something they say is that people, when they have that feeling or they may, have that rupture, because I mean, once you hear that pop, it's either going to take you out or knock you out. And most people, if it doesn't take you out right away, want to lay down, just like when you have a headache, you're in relax mode. You just want to lay down. And some people would lay down and, never wake up. But fortunately, like I said, I did things in reverse. My son was there on the couch, and I said to him, I said, "If anything happens, call 911, because as parents, you always try to be strong and I'll be okay. This will go away." That's kind of what I'm thinking. But when the tears started rolling down his face, I knew I had to do something, because he was probably seeing what I wasn't seeing. Like he could probably, just visually, that I just was not myself. So I called my neighbor who, I had just picked him up from, and, actually the neighbor and another parent, they came. And at that time, I had a dog, and my dog was a yapper. My dog, she was a yapper. And she didn't know my neighbors. They had never been in my house. But when they came, and this is something I realized later when I was recovering, I said, "Brownie didn't bark." And she didn't go up to them, like, 'cause that's what dogs do. It's as if she knew her human needed help, and she did not get in the way of that. So my neighbors took me to the neighborhood hospital, which was maybe like a block and a half. And, you know, because I said, my head hurt, they dropped me off and, I checked in, but I neglected to say that I heard a pop. Had I said I heard a pop, they likely would have triaged me, like, right away. And, I sat there like everyone else. I don't remember, because it's been quite some time. It's been actually June 5th was 28 years. And I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, they called me and they took me in. Well, they took me in the back, but the exam room wasn't ready, yet. So they had me in the hallway, and if you've ever had a bad headache or a migraine or, you don't want bright lights. You wanna, like,
Yeah,
dark
yeah.
or cover. So, I don't know. I still had my wits about me at the time because I'm laying there in the hallway with this bright light, and I put the sheet over my head, but then I thought better of it, and I said, "Let me get this sheet from over my head before they wheel me down to the morgue." So, Oh my goodness. So, eventually, they took me into the exam room. The doctor, he came in and asked me how I was feeling. Again, I did not mention the pop. So he gave me a shot of Demerol in my thigh, as if he was treating me for a migraine. And he said, okay, I'm going to come back, in a little bit and check on you and see how you're feeling. And so he came back and he said, so how are you feeling? I said, I feel a little better. He said, okay, we're sending you home. I said, but how come when I massage my temples, it's extremely tender?
Mhm,
He
mhm.
said, we're doing a CAT scan because apparently there was blood there, you know? So, they took me in the room and then they inject you with this dye. And, right then, they told me if I had an allergic reaction to that dye, I could die, you know? So I'm in this room, it's dark and there were a lot of people in there. It just seemed like crowded in this room. And then all of a sudden I hear like an applause and I'm like, what are they clapping for? Because they had found the bleed. It's like success. They were looking for it and they found the bleed and that's what they were clapping for. And so the doctor told me he was going to send me, excuse me, to another hospital, Thomas Jefferson University Hospital. He said where they're better able to take care, to handle this. So, they um send me, by ambulance to Thomas Jefferson University Hospital and everyone's coming in and they're telling me you're in great hands, you have the best doctor, which of course at that time, because I didn't know what was going on, I um you know, I'm listening to them and I'm like, okay, it's like, okay, that's what they're supposed to tell me, right? And then I remember a doctor telling me that my chances were 60-40.
Whoa, what?
That's 50-50, 60-40. I'm laying there and I'm like,
Oh my
I'm,
god.
yeah, and I'm telling myself, I'm like, nope, it's not my time yet. I have a lot more living to do. It's not my time yet. I wasn't accepting that. And I'm going to backtrack real quick because that Monday I had gone to my primary care physician, because, I'm having these headaches. Let me go and have myself checked out. And so he, diagnosed me with, a sinus infection, and gave me a prescription and sent me home. Wednesday, I'm having emergency brain surgery. And unfortunately, sinus infections, I don't want to scare anyone, but, they can be um, misdiagnosed. Like an aneurysm, it can be misdiagnosed as a sinus infection. Excuse me. So, going back to, the 60-40 and then, my neurosurgeon or cause there was a team of them, but the main one, he came and he introduced himself and, he wasn't, too tall and I remember he had like a, one of those big, mustaches, like the kind of, like twirl up at the sides, if that makes
Mhm,
sense,
mhm.
like,
Yeah, I could picture
and
that.
so yeah, so, so he introduces himself and, we go in there and, I have my surgery and I woke up eventually, of course, not in the operating room, but, I'm like, okay, okay, I got through surgery and my surgery, was like 7.5 hours. And so then I'm in ICU. I was in ICU for almost a month. But when I did wake up and a doctor came in and this doctor, the doctor that I met that I told you about, the mustache, he was white, right? And, so the doctor that came in, after my surgery, checking on me, he was black, he was tall, and he was handsome.
Mhm.
Right? I'm not saying the other one wasn't, but it was just a contrast, so, um, so he's talking to me and I'm like, "Wow, wow, wow," like when he's talking, like, I'm like,
Mhm.
"Who are you?" Right? And I guess he could see the puzzled look on my face, and I mean, he had on a white coat, but, he said, "Oh, I'm doctor," because my doctor, I believe he had gone away on vacation. But I am glad that, he was there long enough to do, my surgery,
Right.
because I later found out that he's world renowned. He's a world renowned neurosurgeon. So, the other surgeon, I jokingly said to the nurses, I said, I thought I had died and gone to heaven because I was like, wait a minute, because, he was very nice looking. He was very humble. He was very, because I think some of us sometimes we get like, we have a certain kind of, a feeling, about doctors, like they just seem so serious and intense. And he was just total opposite of that. He was, very nice demeanor and answered all my questions. And he actually, treated me or, came and checked on me, until I was, pretty much released from the hospital. And there were other ones, but, there were, 2 that I kind of remember. But anyway, so, he's telling me, I'm not out of the woods yet. He had to wait for like, 2 weeks to make sure I didn't have something that's called a vasospasm, which are mini strokes, because some people will have, a rupture followed by, a stroke or a vasospasm. And so I'm like, wow, so I just, tried to stay calm and not, stress over anything and get through that 2 weeks. And thankfully I got through, the 2 weeks. And, they brought oh, this is another thing because I had like 2 black eyes. My head was swollen. There were tubes coming out of my head with draining blood. So when they brought my son to see, especially the younger one, they tried to, wrap up my head and cover it as best they could so he wouldn't come there and like be shocked at, how I looked. And I also, when I was in a room with a mirror, I had him cover it up because I did not want to see myself like that.
Yeah. Mm,
So then, eventually, I go home and, I'm recovering. Oh, let me back up again because I was in Philadelphia. I was divorced. I was there with my 7-year-old. I didn't have any family in the state of Pennsylvania.
mm,
In order to do my surgery, they had to call my aunt who, helped raise me. She lived in New Jersey. Now, New Jersey is across the bridge, but still, it's not Pennsylvania, all right? So they, were able to call her and, she said, well, ask her son. My oldest son was 17 at the time, so he couldn't, so she gave them, thankfully, the permission. And, so, I go home and I'm, recovering just pretty much just relaxing, I guess you could say. And then, then I when my youngest son, graduated, from high school, I took a position here in Maryland for Circuit Court for Prince George's County as an official court reporter. Philadelphia served me well, but I'm suburban, so
mm.
yeah, I mean, it's a nice place to visit, and I go back often. I love to visit. I just, suburban girl. So, I came here and I, you know, my son is older, independent, and, I, stayed at court for like 5 years and then I left and then I went out on my own, as an independent contractor. And I actually transitioned from court reporter to captioner. I use the same equipment, except now I work with the deaf and hard of hearing. And I enjoy it because I can be anywhere.
Mm,
And and actually, when I was in court reporting school, it was a dream of mine to work on Capitol Hill as a legislative reporter. That didn't happen, but when I, became a captioner, because deaf people are everywhere, and it's not just deaf people that use captioning services. It could be and another common misconception is that all deaf people know sign language, and they don't, especially late deafened. And so, I got my clearance and, so I do a lot of work for the federal government and I've been probably every government agency you could possibly think of. And during the Biden administration, I had the opportunity. I've been to the White House like 4 times And that meant a lot to me because what a lot of people don't know is President Biden also was a two-time brain aneurysm survivor.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I mean, it was a long time ago. Mine was 28 years ago, and I think his was like 10 years before mine. I didn't get to meet him personally, but we were in close proximity to each other, but it just meant a lot for me. I mean, who would have thought, like, okay, my chances are 60-40. I'm getting ready to go in here and have this brain surgery. And then, what, 20 some odd years later, I'm at the White House with the President of the United States,
Right.
who also is a two-time brain aneurysm survivor. That is, like, amazing. And I've been, to Capitol Hill, I took um, a number of hearings there. And, so that was something like I try to help inspire people because you never know, you know, what, something that may happen to you, how things may develop in the future, how things may turn out to go from being in that hospital room or operating room, chances 60-40 to the White House. And I'm like, okay, that's a career high for me. And I'm like, okay, where do you go from there? Because I've been to Disney World, So, but, now that I'm an independent contractor, I, can make my own schedule. Like I said, my kids are grown and, I joined all these groups. I joined, Black Girls Do Bike, Girl Trek, Goombay, all these, outdoor groups that I didn't know about, but, I found out, on Facebook, social media, especially during, the pandemic when people were looking for something to do because you get tired of sitting in the house. Um, so one of the members um, of Girl Trek, she knew that I liked all three disciplines. Well, I can't say I'm really a big fan of running, but
Mhm.
the walking, the I mean, if a dog was running after me, yes, I would run. But so she brought it to my attention. Oh, there's, this triathlon that's, you know, happening. And, I did my research and I'm like, oh, Philadelphia, that's a comfort zone for me because I used to live there and it was in a pool because I think I had thought about triathlons in the past, but not likely in open water, so I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I'm a swimmer. I've been swimming all my life. I can do this. I can do this. I posted it on Facebook and everything. And, so I had like 3 weeks to train because I found out last minute. And, I went online and I, checked into all these different, triathlon groups, triathlons for women, all these tips. And it was very helpful. And then what I did, because at that time I also was a water fitness instructor hiatus right now, but I was in the water like 4 hours a week, and that's the best all over, like, exercise. And so I was working on my endurance because like I said, I can do all three disciplines. So I would just, go out there and, my bike and swimming some laps and running, and I have my son out there, helping me. And the day of came and, you get in the water according to where you think you are, your level or, yeah, your level, whatever. And
Yeah.
so I didn't get in the front, so I, like maybe somewhere in the middle. And I get in there and I am getting kicked, bumped,
Uh,
everything. and And I'm used to when I swim, at a gym, I'm in the lane by myself, it's just nice and, and I don't know why I'm doing the motion as if you can see me like nice
right.
and
Yeah.
calm.
I
But
know what you
then in this water, and then all of a sudden I started pushing and kicking back. I was like, and of course it exerts more energy because I'm like, get all that water. And so I get to the end of the lane because it's a 300-meter, swim, which in, Olympic pools, 3 laps. I get to the end and I'm like, I can't do this. And then I thought about it and I was like, you posted this on Facebook. You have to keep
you gotta do it. You
that that
you
was
got
my incentive. I said, "Oh, no, I gotta keep going." And I did. I got through the pool, and then I hopped on my bike, and it was like had to be like around 90 degrees. But the good thing is, you're wet when you get out. I mean, you have to change your shoes, and I got some tips about that too, putting a lot of powder in your sneakers so you can do that transition quickly. Hopped on my bike and it felt so good because you're damp and you're riding and, like what, 2 minutes you dry. So, so I did the bike ride. That was 9 miles. Excuse me. And, then when I get almost to the end, it's all uphill. Most of it is flat until the very end, right before the finish line. It's uphill. And I had to dismount because I couldn't. I gave it everything I got. I had to dismount to get up that hill. And my son, who doesn't normally like taking pictures, I don't
Mhm.
know where he came from, but he came. I'm trying to breathe, push the bike up the hill, and he puts the phone in my face and he said, "Mom, you want to say something to your fans?" I s- of all times, right? And I said, "Get that thing out of my face." I just kind of swatted him away. And I got up, close to the finish line, got back on, went across the finish line, and then you go and put your bike back on the rack. And then that's when you do your walk, jog, crawl, whatever it takes. And it was hot out there, but there are people out there cheering you on. Even people that don't know you, they would call your number, come on. And that was helpful. And I would like, the intermittent, I would jog, walk, jog, walk, jog, because I'm not a runner like
Yeah.
um, but, I crossed that finish line, and that was the best feeling in the world. I can other than, of course, having my children, it was such a good feeling, and I kinda, like, just, like, fell right into my son's arms, but my god, and I finished in under 2 hours,
What?
and, yeah, under 2 hours, and I didn't finish first, I didn't finish last, but I finished.
That's what
And
I'm
I've yeah, that true, true, and something I understand most people who do triathlons, swimming is the most challenging, or they have to take swimming lessons, to participate. Like I said, I'm a swimmer. I didn't have like a coach, like for certain techniques. I'm sure there's certain breathing strategies and things that I could have benefited from. I even had a swim coach tell me, he said, I wouldn't do a triathlon. But, when I hear from other people like, wow, you did that. And it was a sprint triathlon, but it's still challenging
Right.
even, and after I did it and I was thinking, I wonder if any other brain aneurysm survivors have done it.
Mhm.
And from my research, there's two women who have done them. And, I kept doing my research. And actually, it was Chat GPT that told me that I was the only two-time brain aneurysm survivor, male
Mm.
or female, to do one. And then I reached out and I actually reached out to, I'm not going to say their name, the most famous globally world record verifier, but they wanted to categorize me as impaired and I'm not impaired. And so I was thinking then like, oh, I guess, I won't ever be able to, get a record, certified. And then me not giving up, I'm still on, researching and someone said on Reddit said that they got certified through Atlas World Records. So let me check out Atlas World Records. And I went there and I found them and, they they needed, of course, verification from my neurosurgeon, for the dates and the surgery. And, they did their research, and I'm sure they have access to a lot more than, I do. And they were able to confirm that, I was the first, documented, you know, two-time brain aneurysm survivor to complete a triathlon. And, yeah, and then I got my, certificate and yeah,
Wow.
so
Congratulations. Oh my gosh. Let me
thank
tell you.
you.
First of all, I know you couldn't see me, but I closed my eyes when you said the pop, and I, like,
Yeah,
my head because I can't even imagine. I don't I just can't.
yeah.
Um, and that you went through that twice, you know the second time not as severe as the first, but I mean, 2 times.
Right.
Um,
I did have two craniotomies. Yeah, and when I had mine, it was around when they were mine was clipped. But I'm finding out, through support groups on social media, of course, you know, over time things change, and so there are some things that people now are privy to that I wasn't back then. So that makes it even more special, I guess you could say. Yeah. But I
and
think your mindset has a lot to do with it too, because I wasn't giving up. Oh no, let's do this little surgery thing. And I have things to do. I have children to raise. And, then I didn't know, but I have records to set.
that is a fact. Like, your mindset, you
Hmm.
know, I look at it as when, like, I'll do a century or a hard ride or this hard thing.
Hmm.
My body's like, "Girl, now you know." I mentioned to you just earlier, my bike ride to Philadelphia, and, like, the last couple miles, I was done. Like, my behind hurt, my feet hurt, I was hungry. It was so bad, but my mindset was like, "Just keep going." Like, it was just,
Hmm.
"Keep going, keep going, keep going." It's easy, to stop, but keep going,
Right.
and I look at that as, you said, "No, I'm meant to be here," right? You
Right.
you look at
Right.
some people who, like, I look at, like, maybe some older people who,
Hmm.
once they break a hip or, break a limb and they're not as mobile, like, they go downhill from there, you know? And it's
Hmm.
like,
Yep.
unless you know, unless you're like, "You know what? Nope. I'm gonna go to rehab. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." Your
Hmm.
mind can, like, literally just say, you're done now."
Right.
You
Right. Right. It
yeah,
that was the thing with the triathlon, because usually when people work out, you usually see them with the earbuds, whatever. For the triathlon, I could not have the music, so that's another thing. I was like praying. I need some water, but
yeah,
yeah, it's a lot. Your mindset has a lot to do with it, to help you get through those events.
yeah, yeah, speaking of praying, I was doing a lot of that on that bike too.
I was like, it's just me and you, Jesus. That's all I need, right?
I was I was thinking to myself, like, "Why did I wanna do this? I put myself through this."
And sometimes you wonder, am I the only one that thinks this way now? Like you're sharing with me. I'm like, why did I?
Why?
And I was 64 when I did it. Um, I was, I think at my best, because I was, being active. And even my son, he said I motivated him, my oldest son, because he was diagnosed with, diabetic. I forget, the numbers. I'm not going to remember, like the technical part, but he said, I inspired him. And, he said when he was talking to the doc, or when she was talking to him, he said it seemed like she was talking to him like he wasn't going to listen or follow
Hmm,
directions. Cause as you know, some people are just pill poppers. Just give me a pill to, whatever. And, but he put in the work, and he's not a diabetic anymore. He reversed his, diagnosis, and he thanked me. And, and to be, my age, and to inspire, my son, that's a big thing. I'm like, wow. She was looking at me and what I was doing, and he put in the work, and
yeah,
yeah.
and like I said, you inspire me, like,
Oh.
you had never met in person, but just from talking to you
Mhm.
and, seeing your story and hearing your story, and it's inspiring, like, and you didn't let anything stop you, you know?
Right.
And that is, like, that's really inspirational, like, "Okay, I'm not gonna let what happened to me in the past stop me. I'm gonna move forward. I'm not gonna let my age stop me, which is
Mhm.
really important to me. Like I mentioned, I'm 42,
Mhm.
yet to learn or feel confident in a pool to swim, but I will one day. It may
Yeah.
take me 40 years,
No,
may
it won't.
don't know how long it's gonna take me, but I that's one thing that I will accomplish before I leave this earth. And I have heard about, the triathlons and the triathletes kicking you
Mhm.
in the face in that water. I have heard that.
But you also heard that I started kicking back, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what you heard, I guess. Yeah. But
Oh,
it's
goodness.
inspiring, and, I hope to one day, well, not hope, because I will, one day, do a triathlon, maybe even do an Ironman.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I like challenging myself. I like I'm not a big runner either, but I ran my first half marathon this year,
Mm.
and I'm like and it's probably my last one, but
You did it, right?
I did it. I told myself I was gonna do this thing, and that's it. Now we have a friend in common, Troy, and
Mhm.
I interviewed him late last year, and he was telling me about the Empire State Building run up, a race, and I was like, that's interesting. I've
Mhm.
never He's the first person that I've met that is a stair runner or I
I never heard of it until I s well, we became Atlas World Record friends. The friends through Atlas World Record.
yeah,
I had never heard of that.
I I've never heard of it, and he inspired me, so I signed up.
Uh-uh.
Hopefully I get in because it's just a lottery now, but if I
Oh,
get in
it didn't happen yet.
no, it didn't happen, it
Oh,
happens in October, so if I get in, I'll be running up some stairs in the Empire State Building, which to me sounds crazy and cool at the same time.
mhm.
Like, this is just so amazing, like and that's one reason why I love having this podcast, like, because I get a chance to meet and talk to people I probably wouldn't
Mm.
meet or talk to, and
Right.
if you're inspiring me, you're inspiring somebody else. So, yeah, that's thank you. Like, again, thank you for doing it.
I'm just doing what I'm able to do, and, and I've had people tell me that I inspire them, and I'm like, "Okay." Long as I can, and like I said, I know my limitations. I'm not gonna try to hurt myself. I'm not
Right, of
Iron
course.
Man is not on my bucket list. Mm-mm. Maybe if I was younger and I was doing something like this, but
Yeah.
no, not now. I don't feel like I need to prove myself to anyone,
Mhm.
but to myself, and like I said, I was so proud that I did that one. I did another one the next last year. Um, that year, um, I got through it. I finished it, but believe it or not, I had a headache when I started it.
Oh, no.
It was a hunger headache.
Okay.
And it was a struggle for me, but I got through it. I didn't feel as enthusiastic as I did, with the first one. So, but
Mhm.
yeah, so I have 2 under my belt.
That's good. I actually was it the same one? Was it the same Philadelphia one?
Yes, it was. It was the same one. Yes. Mhm.
Um, I actually was supposed to do that one last year, but
Really?
yeah, but I had to work, so I chose the money over it. But,
Hey.
I will maybe one year, I'll get a chance to do that one, but
Let me know, because 'cause I'll be there supporting you. I'll be there cheering you
okay.
on.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
do you have any other maybe events that you wanna do? Maybe not, another try, but any cycling events or, swimming events that you wanna participate in?
I am actually thinking about putting together because September is Brain Aneurysm Awareness Month, and I'm thinking about because, usually, I don't want to say usually everybody's different, but, you hear about walks, for fundraisers, 5Ks and like that. I'm trying to think outside the box. So I was thinking of maybe getting a group together to ride.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm still, you know, toying around with that in my head. Of course you have to, there's things you have to get in place, location and people and all that stuff. And of course, I'll let you know.
yeah,
Um, I
no,
don't know if you'd be able to make it. I don't, it's, yeah, I would like to do something like that. But as far as like any event, I don't have any events, like on my calendar right now. I would like to, even though I don't like to run, I would like to do a half marathon. I don't I'm not doing any I know I'm not doing anything the rest of this year because I have some things I need to take care of, with myself. So maybe next year, I can look at some things. Yeah. But, other than, like I'll do, like a ride with, Black Girls Do Bike, and, of course, they have, like, different weeks, they may have, like, the short and sassy ride,
yeah,
which may be, like, 15 miles, and then they do I'm not a distance rider, so, wherever you fit in, and that's what the walking groups and the running groups, wherever you fit in as far as, distance, so, like, I guess you could say recreationally, like, I'll, ride with them. I'm always in the pool. I will let's see, what time is it? 2 hours. I will probably be at my community pool. Um, I love to swim. Some of you're probably too young to know, of Esther Williams, who was, like, one of those synchronized swimmers back in the day. I mean, I'm not a synchronized swimmer, but just I was always fascinated with the water. I don't know I'm not sure where that came from, but I love the water. I'm either in it, on it, around it, thinking about it, drinking it.
yeah, yeah.
You know, they say find something that brings you joy. I love going to, the beach. And people are like, "Oh, you get in that water?" No, I sit beside it, bury my toes in the sand. If it gets hot, I'll go sprinkle some water and go sit back down. But it's so tranquil, and actually last summer I was at Rockaway Beach, my first
Yeah,
time, yeah, my oldest sister who I found, well, I forget what anniversary is, but much later in life, she
mhm,
lives not far from that beach, so I surprised her, me and my son and his girlfriend, we went there. Apparently, we were at the wrong end of the beach, I mean, it was okay. I mean, look, there was water, there was sand, but
yeah.
there was more action at, another end of the beach. Um, but something I also found out I never knew is that, Rockaway Beach, and you may know this, is the largest urban beach in the country. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. Wow.
Yeah, it said 6 miles long. This is the longest urban beach in the country, and I know they built it up since, what was it, Hurricane Sandy or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
mhm.
because when I met my sister, it was before that hurricane, and we walked down there and everything, and, it was, it was okay, but then, because it got all the attention from Hurricane Sandy, of course, now they kinda built it up and they, have the hotel or, hotels, beachfronts or whatever they built it up, so yeah,
Wow.
it
You know,
costs more to go basically
I've
to go
never
there.
been there, so now you got me, curious. I've never been
And
there.
there were a lot of bikers. It was a big like the, boardwalk or whatever. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll be looking on your page to see, I'm riding down the boardwalk, Rockaway Beach. Yeah, because I was if I had had my bike, I would've been riding down here too, but,
Yeah, thanks. I gotta check that out now.
Mhm, yep,
I'm not a beach person, but, um, I'll definitely check that beach out.
mhm,
Ride my bike there maybe, like you said.
yeah, now, what part of New York are you?
I'm in the Bronx,
Okay.
and that beach might be kind of far from me to ride,
Yeah.
but, it'd be a challenge.
Oh, to ride to I
Yeah,
see what you're saying.
I'd ride to it, yeah.
What's the longest distance you've ridden?
Recently with the,
Is that the one you were just talking about?
yeah, I did 117 miles, so, yeah. I still can't believe it. Yeah. And I look back when I first started riding in 2017. I got my first road bike in 2018, and then I'm also a member of Black Girls Do Bike, and, now I'm riding to different states and riding over 100 miles. It's kinda cool. Kind of crazy.
So now you got me thinking, because you're with Black Girls Do Bike, because we could do like a, I don't know what you would call it, like you wouldn't have to come, like you could do it there, like,
Yeah, yeah.
um, hmm, okay, you got me thinking now. So
Yeah.
have to, you get your crew together, I get my crew,
We ride.
yeah, that would be great. Hmm.
And you mentioned before that there was something you went to, you mentioned that
Up
right
Capitol
before we
Hill?
started I think it was you spoke about Capitol Hill and that you lobbied, you did something.
Oh, we do it, well, I'm not able to go every year, but, yeah, this past Wednesday
Yeah,
with
yeah.
the B Foundation for Brain Aneurysm Prevention. We come from all over the country, and we go to Capitol Hill, and they pair us up with, because I was with others, survivors from, it could be survivors and family members. So I was there with, Maryland. All of us were from Maryland, and, so we go and, we speak to, the senator, representatives of our state. And, we go in there and we share our stories. And, I think I said it earlier, sometimes, and sometimes that's like the only opportunity to hear stories from, other survivors, and we're all different, and that's something that I left out, which is probably pretty important, is that when the doctor told me my chances were 60-40, he said of the 60% who survive, 70% have neurological deficits. So I'm in the minority. I have no neurological deficits. And the group that I went to Capitol Hill with, I believe it was just me and one other woman who had no neurological deficits. Because some it could be, a number of things. A few of the ladies that were there, like memory. One lady, she was in a wheelchair, and so, and I'll share another thing. When I was working in court, my supervisor had assigned me to, when you tell people you work in court, I think the first thing people think of is criminal court. They don't necessarily think of medical malpractice, family court, that other stuff. But anyway, my supervisor had assigned me to a medical malpractice case where a woman had a TBI, traumatic brain injury. And so I'm thinking, am I going to be able to do that, without getting emotional? And I mean, this was years later, but still there are things that trigger me because sometimes I can talk about it, like we're talking now, and other times I get choked up and, emotional. So I go in there, to take this case. And then during a break, one of the attorneys, pulled me to the side and he said, "You didn't seem fazed by any of the terminology," because lawyers can tell when they have a court reporter who's new, and green versus somebody, who may be experienced. And I don't think I caused him any concern because, well, what I told him was, I said, "I don't tell a lot of people this." I said, "But I'm a two-time brain aneurysm survivor, and I'm familiar with the terminology." And, um, there's a stigma that comes with, as I'm sure you know, with anything brain related,
Mhm.
depression,
Yep.
anything like that. People kind of look at you like, so of course I'm not going to go, you know, especially being in the legal profession. Oh yeah, I'm a brain aneurysm survivor. Next, like, I even had a doctor, um, and some of my doctors, because they know I don't have any neurological deficits, they'll ask me, "Oh, so how did you feel?" and blah blah blah. Because they're curious. That's their profession. And because I am one of the few, who had no neurological deficits, they can get some answers from me because most people, unfortunately, you know, don't, aren't in my position. But, I'll share that, with them, and this particular doctor and I was telling her, that, I was a brain aneurysm survivor, and, she looked at me, like, differently. It wasn't like other doctors, and she said, "I have one too, but don't tell anybody."
Wow.
And I said, "I won't." Um She had hers, like, before, she had, finished medical school, or she was getting ready to take some her boards or whatever the case may have been, and I get it, because, they're gonna wonder, "Are you okay? Are you" it could be like a career suicide kind of thing, but, yeah, but, yeah, I told her, I said, "No, I won't." I mean, I share the story, but I don't tell, her
Yeah, yeah,
name or anything like that
of
because
course.
there's that stigma, and actually, I don't know if you heard, Florence Jeff from the Jeffersons,
Yeah.
they're the maid, she just wrote a book. She's, I think, like, maybe in her 90s, but she just wrote a book, and in her book, she revealed that she had a brain aneurysm, and it was, like, some years ago, and my son, my oldest son, he said to me, he said, "How come she's just mentioning this now?" I said, "Career suicide."
Mm, mm, mm.
Because you never would have known. I mean, fortunately, she got through hers and she was able to go back, to work. But sometimes you let people know and, they,
Look at you differently.
look at you to action. Absolutely. Yeah. So,
I
yeah.
think Quincy Jones, I think I heard he had one.
Quincy Jones had one. Yeah, he had to stop playing the trumpet.
Mm,
Yep.
mm, yeah.
And Jamie Foxx, he didn't have a brain aneurysm. He had a brain bleed. There could be, different causes, for bleeds, and I'm not 100% sure, what, his situation was, but my son did tell me, because I think it's a natural reaction, especially somebody who's sort of familiar with it. When you hear of a brain bleed, they, think it's an aneurysm, and it could be something else, so when he had his special, it was, a comedy, but, and he talked about, his, experience, and I had my younger son watch it with me, and there were a lot of similarities, with, the process, and, Jamie Foxx, like, he had some humor in there, and then there were, some, emotions and, teared up and stuff, but, I could totally, relate to it. Yeah.
You are blessed. That's all I
I
could.
Yeah, he keeps on blessing me. That's what I'm like, I'm still here for a reason. That's why I
That's
try to,
right.
I post and, and I try to relate everything to, mental health and taking care of yourself and not do too much. And I also, because some people, as you know, on social media, everything's perfect. My life is roses. If I'm having a bad day, and thankfully I have more good days than bad, and I'll post it, "Oh, I had a bad day today, but I know how I feel is only temporary." And I always say that, it's only, temporary, that feeling. And usually, try to find your happy place. And for me, it's the beach, the pool. I don't know, just does something to me, just makes me feel good. So, yeah.
But yeah, same way. We do have these bad moments but
Mhm.
now it's like, okay, I move on and do something that brings me joy, whether it's building a Lego set, whether it's riding my bike, whether
Mhm.
it's hanging out with friends or taking a walk with my mom. It's something that is going to bring that joy back and try to change that mood, and you're absolutely
Mhm.
right. I tell people about the stress. I try to limit stress is inevitable, but I think it's the dwelling over it to the actual stressing over, things that we can't control.
Right. Right, right.
For me, that's just like so.
Mhm.
Yes,
And they say even, like, helping others can help you take your mind off of, what may be bothering you. It's a good feeling when you can help someone else, you know?
definitely. And I could say with this podcast, you have helped me. You
Aw.
I do like, I think I enjoy having conversations, and I enjoy having a conversation that feels like a conversation and not an interview, and like someone
Yeah.
who I would just talk to on a regular, so I really appreciate that, and I'm glad that, you know, that's what this was for me. Um, so yeah, I'm thankful, and, before we wrap up, is there any final words you would like to part with?
I just want people to, find what makes them happy. I know, these can be some very stressful times, but there has to be something out there, that would make you happy. And just realize, if you're in a bad place or, you're feeling down, it's only temporary. There'll be better days and, just keep pushing and even exercise. You don't have to go to the gym and lift weights. Something as simple as, going out your door and taking a short walk or, go sit at a park. Sometimes just, sitting, and being alone with yourself that's okay too. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you again for being a guest. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I know others
So
will
did
as well.
I.
This is the Rolling with Tay podcast. I'm your host, Tasia, aka Tay. Thanks for listening, watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.